Don't do that. Hi, I'm Shawcat, and I'm making a fantasy survival game called Nightly Routine. It's about building castle bases to protect yourself since you are attacked by cursed creatures during the night. And it's also about protecting your sleeping king who is oblivious to everything going on. And I've been working on it way too long. In 2020, I had the idea to release my first ever commercially available video game. I worked on plenty of projects before and had finished not nearly as many, but the ones I have completed were all small, free games. So it was time for the big enchilada. Enchilada. So I decided to make a zombie base building game, and I figured I could finish it within a few months, which of course is a ridiculous statement for somebody who's never released a game before. I started with a really basic building system that definitely could have been better, and also an inventory system. And that only took about a week, and clearly I was pretty much done with the game at this point. All I needed left were the zombies, and here's where I hit a wall. It's a problem I knew I would run into, but refused to think about because that's the way I deal with all my problems. But the problem was, what was I gonna do about 3D models? I had no experience 3D modeling, and releasing a commercial game with only assets online is not an easy task for anybody. So I made the call to try to model the characters myself. Now, I opened Blender for the first time, and for some insane reason, my first attempt was to sculpt the character using the Blender sculpting tools instead of just regular 3D modeling, and quickly discovered why sculpting is famously harder than 3D modeling. I did actually complete the model though, and despite looking pretty terrible, I think he actually came out looking really nice. Which is an oxymoron, but I think you guys get what I mean when you're looking at it. But I quickly became unsatisfied with his appearance, and I wanted to redo it. So I went back in a few weeks later, and referencing tons of other videos and tutorials, I came up with a model that looks kind of like this. And I still love the way this guy looks. And I made the smart call to do a Raymond-style detached limbs look, so animating would be easier for myself, and I wouldn't have to worry about the awful process of rigging and weight painting a character. Then, I didn't do anything for 8 months. When I finally did return to the project, instead of working on pointless things like gameplay, I was working on the really important stuff, like what different outfits you could have to equip for your character. I was trying to think of unique things to make the character less bland, and my sister suggested the idea of pandas. What if they were pandas? That's a stupid idea. I thought that idea was really cool, so I made this panda head for the character, which in retrospect, honestly, is kinda a little bit creepy. But I started to get really into the idea of panda characters, so guess what? That's right, you guessed it. I deleted the entire project and started over. I mean, is it really your first video game if you don't completely give up and start over? This time around, I said I was going to be better, more planned out, and all that other stuff everyone tells themselves when they start a new project. My friend Tyler was helping me come up with ideas to make it unique and fun, so we designed a map that ended up not being finished, and then another map that ended up not being finished, and then another map that ended up not being finished, and then another map that we actually did finish, and that's the one we're currently using right now. Through this process, I discovered that I hate environmental design, and I'm really bad at it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Remember when I said I didn't do anything for 8 months? That was actually a lie. I didn't necessarily work on the game for those 8 months, but what I did do was practice 3D modeling. I started finding it pretty fun when I actually got the hang of Blender's controls, and I made a ton of improvements as I went. This was super beneficial because now I actually had way more confidence going into our game, Nightly Routine, with the idea that I could actually create all the 3D models. So in that time, I created tons of environmental assets for the game, and this grass alone took about 3 weeks to make, since most of it was in-engine, and I really wanted it to look perfect and fluffy. The environment is obviously important because we use it to mine our resources, of course, and it creates the entire look of the game. But what I also wanted to do was remake that panda model. I ditched the detached limb idea, which was a tough call because animating was ridiculously easier back then than animating with what we have now. But I went back in, I added a sphere, and with a couple adjustments, I was done. I made 3 variations: the player model, the zombies, which are no longer zombies, but they are cursed pandas, and the king. The new game model was to build a base to protect yourself from the enemies at night, but the new twist on it was that you must protect the king as well. Unfortunately, he's a whale sweepy, and he doesn't realize the dangers of the situation he's in because he's taking a snappy. Once you kill the night pandas, you collect their souls, which you can then trade with merchants for some goodies. So merchants. So Tyler and I came up with some friendly merchant ideas that you can make deals with during the day. We conceptualized them, and then we got my sister to make the concept art, which was very nice of her to do and also very useful in the modeling process. Because neither Tyler and I, we can't draw, and my sister has a degree in art and a career in it, so that was an easy call. These guys were harder to make since they had a lot more detail than the pandas, but they ended up looking really excellent. And first up we have Digby Gilroy, and he's the mushroom man. He's the one that sells you armor, which once you buy you can increase your maximum health with. Out of every character I created, he was definitely the most fun and probably the one I liked the most, and he was the most fun to animate, especially the way he hides when nighttime comes around. Since the new year had just started, Tyler and I got into Milanote to organize the project, which was incredibly useful. And no, the video is not sponsored by Milanote, but I mean, hey, Milanote, I got an email. You've got fingers and a keyboard. Let's make this happen. But no, in all seriousness, Milanote has been very useful. I would highly recommend it if you're looking to organize your project. Anyway, on Milanote, we organized everything else that we had to do to complete the game for the rest of the year, organized down to the week, which would allow us to finish in December of 2022, which was a month ago, and our game is not out. So, what happened? Well, pretty much as soon as we had this set in stone schedule, like the same day, I went outside and I broke my arm. And pretty badly too. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to take a picture of the x-rays, but here's my rendition of what it looked like. So obviously I couldn't use that arm for a couple of months, and that slowed us down quite a good amount, but I didn't actually stop working. Rockbiter, the mole man, was the next merchant to make, and most of what I did with him was actually done with just one hand, my right hand. You can tell he looks a little rough around the edges compared to Digby Gilroy, but I did do my best. In the game, he sells you blueprints that you use to unlock more items in your crafting workbench. Programming and animating with one hand was also a huge setback because typing is only half as fast, so things were going really slowly. But next was the Riverman, and he was easier luckily, just based off the design that we came up with. Less detail, less animations, but we still captured this mysterious vibe that we were going for. The plan for him in the game is he will trade souls for a soul. So he will give you allied pandas that will help you gather resources and fight night pandas. So I continued to work on things here and there over the next few months, and I finally got all healed up in the process. And I don't know if during this devlog you've noticed that mysterious mountain up there, but that also plays an important part of the game as well. See, the night pandas don't just try to kill the king the way they try to kill you, they actually sacrifice him at the top of Mount Morthibus. This is what happens if you aren't able to save him in time. But why are they doing this to your poor old king? Maybe I'll wait until the next video to talk about that one. My time is almost up for this one, and there was a ton of stuff to cover since it was a 2-year process, and there's still a lot more in the game that I haven't covered, like making the sword animations and the combat with the sword itself. The entire building system, which was revamped like 3 times, but it's starting to look really nice now. Carrying the king, movement, sliding, this sliding bug that's been around for over a year and I still haven't fixed. These larger weapons that you can buy and operate in order to protect your castle once it becomes larger. These are still a pretty work in progress. We only have a cannon and a catapult and a mortar that shoots molasses right now that slows pandas down when they walk through them. So we're coming up with a few ideas, and hopefully we can get those implemented in pretty soon. But the next devlogs I plan to make, I want to be more digestible content, more of what I've done from this video onto the next video and what happened in between there rather than a giant 2-year period like this. And also, if you're interested in making games yourself, I have a free Unreal Engine cheat sheet that I made that's on my website and has a lot of useful information about making games. I use it myself all the time. You can go pick it up there. And if you're really serious about making games, I also sell courses on my website too, where I have tons and tons of tutorials per course that go through the process of making a full game start to finish in Unreal Engine. So if you like that, check that out as well. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.